members please introduce themselves?
Thank you, Elise. I'm Dowa Hitch and serve as the Communication and Public Engagement Director for the city. And here comes.
That works.
My name is Trey Irby. I'm the Neighborhood Services Specialist.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Christine Israel, and I'm the Communication and Public Engagement Manager, and I'm trying to figure out if we're streaming right now, which is why I seem so distracted. So,
Should we take a pause while
yeah,
we get this
that would be
situated?
great.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, we're streaming as the Urban Forestry Commission, and we're going to keep streaming, but I'm going to, we'll fix that overnight or by the morning when people go back to find it. So,
Wonderful.
thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Let's see if I can get my device to turn back on. We will start with a review of the agenda and approval of the draft minutes. So, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Charles.
I second that.
Second. And then I would just offer to add after the Festival of Neighborhoods to also talk about some vacancies that we're going to have on our committee coming up. So if you guys are amenable to that addition.
Amenable?
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Then all in favor of approval of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And now we will go into approval of the draft minutes. I hope everyone had a chance to look over those. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from our August 22nd meeting?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Jake.
Second.
Thank you, Trevor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. All right, well, like I said, this is our annual retreat meeting, so this meeting is going to be a little different than some of our other ones. We're going to spend a lot of our time strategizing for the next year. But before we do that, we have a little icebreaker activity, which is Asheville Neighborhood Trivia. And I heard Trey put a lot of work into coming up with some trivia. So, so Christina, how do we want to go about this?
Yes.
How's this going to work?
Okay, so everyone's going to need to use their mobile device. If you didn't bring a mobile device, I'll lend you one. And on the next slide, you can scan the QR code if that works for you. If you don't want to scan it, don't worry about it. Open your web browser and go to Slido, SLIDO.com. And once you're there, you're going to enter the code that's on the screen. And I'll read that out in a second. And just take your time. We're not in any hurry. Okay, cool. Yeah, the code is 3312736. And if everyone wants to kind of give me a thumbs up when you make it there, fantastic. Okay, so this is neighborhood trivia, you guys. And here we go. Okay. Your first trivia question. Which neighborhood is the historic Stumptown located in? Burton Street, Montford, Kenilworth, or Redwood Forest? And you'll select one, and I'm sort of looking to see, yeah. Ooh, 43% said Burton Street. Turns out the correct answer is Montford. Ooh,
What is
wow.
Stumptown?
Stumptown is a neighborhood that no longer exists, but when they built Interstate 240, it plowed through the Stumptown neighborhood. It is one of the historically Black legacy neighborhoods in Asheville.
Of course it was.
Yeah, right? Question. What neighborhood has a hiking trail that leads up to the Blue Ridge Parkway? Is it Parkway Forest, Bull Mountain, Oakley, or Haw Creek? I'm enjoying the looks on your faces, I'm sorry.
This is a trick question.
Why is it a trick question?
Well, now you're giving
One's
data.
not in the city.
Mm,
Okay, go
these all fall in the city.
ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a county neighborhood by the same name that does lead up to the,
Oh,
never mind.
okay, okay. So, looks like 57% said Haw Creek, and they were correct. Yes. Good job. And yes, I threw Parkway Forest in there because it's tricky.
Yes.
It's tricky. It's trivia. We got to be a little tricky. Exactly. All right. Which of these is the most recently registered neighborhood? I see you shaking your head. Lower Edgewood, Rhododendron Creek, Sulphur Springs, or Viewpoint?
Can you tell us what year?
2024.
Oh, so this year, okay.
Yes,
We got new ones this year.
that was a hint. Oh, I see Elise is still guessing. Okay, sorry.
It's
Are we all
okay.
in there? Good?
Yeah.
Good job for the guessers, Lower Edgewood. And I'm trying to remember exactly where they are. Do you remember? I'm sorry, I should know that.
Are they below Edgewood? I mean, like,
Always sharp. Okay, which neighborhood is home to an 8-acre nature preserve? Is it Lakeview Park, Falconhurst, Beaver Dam Valley, or Oak Forest? Are you ready? Oh, Kelly's playing too, I love it. Are we all in? Falconhurst. Tricky.
No.
Oh, all right. Elise, top of the leaderboard with 3 out of 4. Charles, a close second, tied with Maura, 2 out of 4. And Elizabeth and Trevor tied for that place. Third place, I guess.
is everybody playing? It's just the top
I
five.
think some people didn't answer anything correctly.
So we're not done yet. What neighborhood has the historic name of Chicken Hill? Is it Malvern Hills, 5 Points, Hillside Terrace, or Wecan, which is the West
West
End
End Klingman
Klingman
Avenue neighborhood.
Avenue? Thank you. We all in?
Oh,
You thought it was tricky throwing in the hills, didn't you?
You know, you're seeing my methods for sure. Congratulations to Elise. Hardest question. Apparently the nature preserve was what stumped the most. Yeah, great job, everybody.
51 seconds, too.
I know, decisive answers. Thank you all for playing neighborhood trivia. That's the first time we've ever done that. So I hope it was a fun icebreaker for y'all. And
I'm going to have to go study the map now.
oh,
Like to warm up at the
good.
beginning of every meeting.
Okay, sure, we can, why not? We'll just keep,
That's actually a good idea. That way we can learn more about neighborhoods.
Well, and I would love to hear neighborhoods like put in some of these
Mhm.
before the meetings.
we would love that too. Okay, cool. Well, we have a new pre-meeting
Trey has a KPI
thing.
now.
Yeah. And there will be another Slido for a prioritization exercise later, so we'll play with that again. Oh, I forgot about the bonus question.
Oh, I already heard that out.
Oh, no, okay. Catch back up, I'm sorry. I can't see the preview, so I'm a little behind. Okay. Which neighborhoods, and this is, you can select multiple, okay? Which neighborhoods make up historic South Side in Asheville? South French Broad, Weekend, The Block, South Slope, Easton Valley Street, Southside United, and or Oakhurst. Which do you think? And this one could take a minute. Okay, 6. We have 6. We have 7. Okay, there we go. All right, so the ones in green, the 4 in green, are the historic neighborhoods that make up the South Side neighborhood. So Southside United, South French Broad, South Slope, and Weekend.
I'm glad everybody got south side.
Me too, yeah. Paying attention here at 6 o'clock in the evening. All right, thank you all very much for playing trivia.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was fun. All right. Well, I enjoyed the icebreaker. Next, we wanted to give the Festival of Neighborhoods Planning Committee a little bit of time to talk about the next steps for the festival. Unfortunately, it was a really difficult decision between Parks and Rec and your office to make the really hard decision to not have the festival because there was some inclement weather in the forecast, which would have put a damper on the day itself, as well as if the field had been very wet and there were vehicles going back and forth, we might have ended up doing some real damage to that city facility. So unfortunately, that decision was made, and we didn't have a rain date, but there is some thought of rescheduling to the spring, perhaps. So Elizabeth, I don't know if you and your team want to talk about that a little bit more. Well, I just want to first say that I am very grateful for all the work that those on the planning team here, as well as those other members of the community, I'm very grateful for all the work that was put in, and I hope that this doesn't take away from the effort that was put in, because I know it was a big lift. So I'll just say that, and then, yeah.
So the good news about the Festival of Neighborhoods is that we exceeded all the goals that we had as a planning team from last year's sort of reintroduction of the Festival of Neighborhoods since before COVID to now. We had decided after last year, I think we had 28 total tables or participants or vendors, and our goal was to expand it this year and to have, to try to hit 40. I think we had a total of 47 that were going to be there that were confirmed. Huge increase. We had an increase in nonprofits, an increase in neighborhoods. I think we had 13 or 14 neighborhood tables that were going to be out there. Last year we had 10. So when you think about that in percentages of increase, it's pretty huge, 40 to 50%. We're really proud of a lot of the work that we did and our community members that just rocked it in getting donations. And at this point, because we are, a lot of it is already mostly done, it's just a matter of finding an alternate date. And if the neighborhood advisory committee decides that it is still something we want to put on, and we had a sort of a debriefing meeting afterwards. We sent out a poll to the vendors, and I think we got 20 out of 40 something responses. Overwhelmingly, they wanted to reschedule it. There were a couple that said they may or may not participate. We were thinking that it would be hopefully sometime in the spring, so there's some things to think about and talk about. Is it something we want to put our energy into? Do we want to have it and then just move it? And that would be it for 25. We wouldn't have another one in the fall, was what we're thinking. We're hoping sometime late April, early May, to avoid a lot of the religious and faith tradition holidays in the middle to late April. come up with a couple of potential Saturdays. I think it was the last Saturday in April or the first Saturday in May.
26th or the 3rd,
Okay.
yeah.
26th of April or May 3rd. So what we're really doing is trying to decide, do we want to do this? And if so, would that mean that we would just have it in the spring, possibly going forward?
Did you say that a lot of the work that had been done for this one that was canceled would mean that you'd have less work to do in the spring?
I mean, I think theoretically, it was just a matter of contacting all the vendors saying, are you available? Do you still want to come? And giving those people that said yes, the first dibs at the spaces. And actually, it would give us more time to secure, nail down food vendors, maybe some more programming, entertainment. We've already got the money raised, and so I guess we're holding on to that. We have the door prizes that, I don't know about the gift cards, but the choice bags we still have to give away. So a lot of that is already in place.
Yeah, from like a logistical standpoint, really the hardest thing to be done at this point would be to schedule food trucks. And that's mostly because food trucks don't book 6 months out. So we've done a lot of work to get to where we are, and we can utilize that. There might be, a little bit of extra fill-in for some of the tents that people don't want to show up for, but aside from like food trucks and those additional tents, which are optional, there's not much left to do.
Great. And just, I definitely support rescheduling the event until the spring, but if we didn't reschedule, if we didn't have it, like we did get some donations from businesses, and so I'm just wondering what the ramification would be if we decided not to have the festival regarding that money.
Basically, we would just reach out to them and say, we're not intending to have the festival. Would you, how can we make it right with you? And so if they request that we refund their donations, that money is earmarked in our department budget. We're not touching it. So do you have anything to add to that? Yeah, we're short on microphones down
I
here.
changed seats and now I'm missing a microphone. No, we can get back to Tim exactly what that will look like on the accounting end of things. If that was the intent for the festival, then likely it would need to be, we would need to send that money back, because money that goes towards the general fund that's outside of a council-appointed thing needs to go through a special process with city council to be able to accept that. So let us look into that and make sure that we've got, through our purchasing and contracting support, that we've got all our I's dotted.
It was all going to be spent towards services. It wasn't like we printed a bunch of T-shirts or
Right.
something and the money's already spent.
Right. It is there in the account, but then it's I think easier to maybe get it in than it is to get out.
Yeah.
And we just want to make sure that there's a clear track record, so there's transparency about how those funds came in and went out for the public.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I think because all that money was going towards the programming, we could still hire, still use it for the inflatable, for the DJ, in fact, we might be able to expand our programming because we have a little bit more money that we could allocate. So in some ways, it will give us more opportunity to get out there and go to neighborhood associations, reiterate what the purpose and objectives were, and try to get even more participation.
Can I ask a question around why we wouldn't also want to do the fall as well? Is it just too much work, or?
Money, work.
Yeah, we met from January to September to plan this one, and it's still, I think it would be, I don't know about what you all think. I think it would be almost impossible to do 2 in 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah, because then we probably couldn't start planning for the fall one until after the May one wraps up, and that gives us a very protracted timeline. Just based on the last 2 years, we definitely need like every bit of those months that we have leading up to the fall festival. So.
I wanted to also say, when I was thinking about your rescheduling, and Asheville seems to have some event every weekend, that, I don't know, it was thinking outside the box, but maybe sometime it might be interesting to think about partnering with another event. You know, if you go to look at the calendar or, you know, like some other kind of event, that wouldn't be a bad thing. It might give you more heft or whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out.
Thank you, I think that's a good idea. We'll have to sort of see what's going on in the spring, and if there's some opportunities there, that would be awesome.
Cool. So, do we need to take a vote of to move it to another date? Are we ready to pick a particular date, or should we think about that maybe in November? Or does your team need like direction now about whether or not we're going to keep going, or?
I think the biggest thing to consider would be what parks are available for spring on those dates. Because we wouldn't want to necessarily, you know, book something at Carrier Park when it could easily be closer to the downtown area.
So we need some locations for these
Yeah.
dates.
If I could, I think that what would be helpful just for tonight would be either a show of support or not from NAC for hosting a festival in the spring, and then that will give whoever is serving on the group that's going to help with planning some direction of kind of where to go from there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, and the one thing I was going to add, it slipped my mind for a second when we were talking about whether to have one again in the fall, is I was kind of mulling over this and wondering if doing it in the spring might be better anyway, since we normally have terms that are ending in June. And so if there was someone who was involved in the committee and their term ended in June, but they started working on the planning in May, and then now it gets carried through after they're not on NAC anymore, and as well as we have new people who would come in July, and maybe they are interested in getting involved, and then if we don't start the planning until later in the year, then they have the opportunity to use the first year of their term to be involved in that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I like the spring date, you know, it's like a season of new beginnings, that sort of stuff. Everyone's been cooped up in the house all winter, and then it's like, oh, something to do. Whereas like at the end of fall, it's like we've been doing all this stuff, and maybe it gets overlooked a little bit. So I actually like the idea of a spring yearly annual tradition.
And I do think the intention with doing it in September, when we first did this last year, was that it's like National Neighbor Day or
Oh, okay.
something. And so the idea was to maybe align with that, but I think we couldn't get that date anyway.
Yeah, I think last year it was it was the same day as Pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
okay.
the other difficulty, because for planning, whenever we plan, what we learned this year is we have to have a rain plan. We have to have like an inclement weather, like either, you know, the following week,
An
something like
alternate
that.
location, an indoor location.
And
That's right.
with the, where the festival had to fall in September, it was like the only sort of available date. We wouldn't have been able to reschedule for the following week because it would have been Pride, and the week after would be Goombay. Anyway, and those are big standing festivals that we know are going to come every year.
I appreciate you mentioning that, because that is something that I think is worth saying, is that in that debriefing, we were all brainstorming, how do we learn from this and get better at communicating and decisions and having the backup plan for next time. And I think it was a really productive conversation about having an alternate rain date already built in, so that people just know if it's not here, it's going to be here, so that we don't lose out on. And it was one of our three annual goals for this neighborhood advisory committee. So I really think following through with that, seeing it through, is really feels like we're doing this with integrity.
Awesome.
So does someone put up a motion to?
Yeah, I was just about to ask for that. If someone would
I'd like to
make a-
motion that we plan to reschedule for sometime in April or May of next year. Or is it that too specific? I can be less specific if I need to. But plan to reschedule the.
You could say spring
festival
2025.
in the spring.
All right, so we have a motion to reschedule our Festival of Neighborhoods for spring of next year. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Joe. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Awesome. Well, I look forward to attending the festival in the spring. Awesome. Okay, and then before we move on to reviewing our goals for last year, I did want to address some upcoming vacancies that we're going to have on our board. We just got a full board, and I remember thinking, oh yes, we're finally at full capacity. And as soon as, I even thought, I was like, oh, don't say that out loud. But so Dane, unfortunately, has had to resign some personal and family health stuff. So I understand that that's very important and a priority for people. Sandra as well has had some other priorities come up, and I thought she might be here today, but she won't be joining us after today. And Jake is going to go sit on the board of the
Center for Honeybee Research.
So a local organization that he's very passionate about what they do. And so you'll be here in November though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
My last meeting will be, I believe, November 25th,
Awesome.
which gives the city time to scout for someone to fill my seat and also me to fill until the end of the year.
So that's going to be 3 vacancies that we'll have, and the city is now filling vacancies on a quarterly basis. So they will do appointments in January. So if you know anyone in your community who's very passionate about neighborhood work, please encourage them to apply. I'm not sure when the clerk's office will send out those notices. They seem to send them every month, but I know they only get filled quarterly for the most part. But certainly when that notice goes out, I'm sure it'll get forwarded to us.
So is that, I noticed that Sandra is specifically representing 28805, so we would need to fill that. And I don't know if Dane was,
He was at large.
he was at large and Jake was at
It was
large.
a downtown kind of representative, so that was.
He lives downtown, but he was an at-large representative.
Okay, so we would have 2 at large and 1 28805.
Yes.
Just
Yeah,
for
so we
people-
would need.
All the people out there listening who are considering this.
That makes it logistically easier other than 28805.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question around quorum?
Yes, that was the next thing I was
Okay,
going
well,
to
why
bring up.
don't I not ask the question, you just do this.
So our quorum is based on the number of active members that we have. So that puts us at
6.
1, 2, 3. That puts us at 6. So we need at least 4 people to be at a meeting in order to constitute quorum. So definitely, if you're anticipating that you won't be able to make a meeting, if you could let us know as soon as you know that. If you know next month I'm not going to make the meeting,
Right.
then that might mean that we reschedule or something else, or that then we know that all the rest of us really need to be here to make sure that we hit quorum.
Also with Dane, that means we lose that bridge to Can. He was also on that committee, and so it was nice to have that flow back and forth.
It might be nice to reach out to that group and see if maybe one of their members wants to
That's interesting. Yeah.
liaise with us in that way.
Festival of Neighborhoods does meet with Will Hornaday regularly from Cannes.
Right, he's very active. Well, there will be more information coming out about those vacancies whenever the clerk's office posts those, but I just wanted to let you guys know that, and to hit on the quorum thing.
Additionally, me leaving the board also opens up the seat for a non-voting member position of the Multimodal Transit Committee if anyone is interested.
That's right. Jake has served as our non-voting liaison to MMTC, Multimodal Transportation Commission. They are involved with all things transportation, from transit, buses to greenways, bicycle infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure. So if there's anyone who's interested in being the liaison from our group to that commission, just let us know.
So that person is essentially a board observer at that point because
Yes.
of the need to be the liaison?
Yes, yeah, take part in all of the discussions, but not in the votes.
Okay.
There's going to be a lot of interesting work over the next year or two on the MMTC due to the River Arts District connecting to Woodfin and also stretching out further south, I believe.
Yes, there's a lot of interesting projects in the pipeline that are being explored there. And I am a voting member of MMTC, so if you have any questions about that, want to learn more, you can certainly ask me. They meet the third Wednesday of the month, or is it the fourth Wednesday? I know it's this coming Wednesday, but sometimes depending on where the month starts, they either meet the week before NAC or the week of NAC. I'd have to look at a calendar more closely.
Would it be helpful or to think about writing CAN and asking for interest in joining the committee from their membership?
That could be helpful.
I don't know. I don't know any of those players, and so but
Mhm.
I think it might be interesting because those people are obviously interested in neighborhoods. So,
And we actually used to have more of a little bit of a robust reporting from other people that are on NAC that were also on other boards and commissions, having a section in our agenda every meeting for these liaison reports, like to keep us interested. So I think, not interested, keep us informed. So MMTC is one of those opportunities. CAN could be, I don't know, possible. I think that would have to be, I don't know if that's officially liaison positions. But there's also room if anyone else is part of anything to bring that to NAC and be part of the agenda.
All right. Unless there's any more discussion on that, I think we'll move to a recap of our goals from the previous year, which Christina has pulled up. Thank you so much. So we had 3 goals for this year, which we kind of organized 3 little working groups around to work towards these goals. That was to increase NAC engagement with Asheville residents, to organize and hold a festival of neighborhoods, and to nominate and celebrate a volunteer of the year. And we just talked about the efforts for the Festival of Neighborhoods. There was a lot of good work done with that. Joe and Dane were doing a lot of work engaging with different neighborhoods, kind of coming up with a plan for how NAC members could engage more with the various neighborhoods. And then Sandra and I were working on the volunteer recognition program. We will be preparing an annual report in January. That's something that all the boards and commissions do that are sent to the city council. And since we don't meet in December, and since the reports are typically due either the day of our January meeting or the week before our January meeting, we usually try to get that together like between meetings, I guess. So I don't know if we want to talk more about that now or in November to talk about like the timeline for getting the report together, or what did you have in mind, Christina?
Certainly, tonight can be a little bit of a start just to get the wheels turning for what could be included in a report in terms of this is what we did and accomplishments, and actually the next slide is focused on sort of a reflection on the goals from 2024. And then I think what would be helpful at the November meeting would be for us to hear from you all. Here's definitely what we want to be included in the annual report, and then for us to talk about the sort of co-editing that needs to happen between the November meeting and when the annual report gets submitted in January. And usually we ask for an extension because typically the deadline to submit the annual report is like the week before your regularly scheduled meeting. And typically they grant us that extension. So, we'll see how it shakes out this year in terms of when the deadline is. We like to review the draft annual report with you all at the January meeting, and everybody gives it their stamp of approval or final edits before we submit it to the clerk's office. And then the chair, at some point, will do a presentation with the Equity and Engagement Committee of Council on the annual report and whatever the community wants to share with them, so.
Gotcha. All right.
Can I ask a logistical question about what we're meeting on tonight? Does whatever we're implementing tonight starts to be what we work on January 1 of 2025, or does it begin now?
It's calendar year, so
Okay.
January, yep.
Yeah. So I guess between now and our next meeting in November, it might be good to get together. Well, you guys have your festival group. Joe and I are running solo right now. But to kind of think about coming up with a couple of like what were the successes of what your working group worked on. Like for example, for the volunteer group, I could say, we recognize this many individuals and we advertised in the neighborhood newsletter and that kind of stuff. I'm sure you guys have some numbers that you can share about participation and that kind of stuff. So yes, we have a little bit of time for reflection. I don't know if Joe, you want to share any kind of successes, challenges, or lessons learned with what you and Dane were working on? Not to put you on the spot.
That's okay. Well, we focused on, informing committee members more about the process of engagement. So that was our focus. We were just kind of beginning. So that's when, we shared, these are the guidelines. If you're a member of NAC, we would like you to send out an email and reach as many people that have registered their neighborhoods in your zip code. And then my suggestion was, sending out a brief summary of the meeting to those key people. And so we focused on a process thinking that, particularly for new members, it's hard to know what to do. And then, so that's output, but then trying to get input back in from your neighborhoods is the hardest part. And so then we focused on, well, what would it be like if we ask NAC members to visit neighborhood meetings, a minimum of 3 to 4 every year. And so those were the steps that we were taking, and everybody seemed to like them, so that's what we were going to move forward with. Also, Dane's position on the board of CAN meant that, again, we could be more engaged with other people, although that's not a city committee, it's an active one. So that would also mean that we would be able to reach out to more people. The lessons learned is, it's a moving target, neighborhoods and contact people, and how difficult that is to, out of the so many neighborhoods, to get a response from your email. And we're still thinking about that. I mean, that's a really hard one that's ongoing. One example, I thought it was real successful, is that this gentleman came to our neighborhood association meeting at Beaver Dam and just did a wonderful job and just got, it was just a very easy, great presentation about this is what we're about, and it really went super. But I have to say, at that meeting, they had a facilitator, and I think this is what all neighborhood associations really face, when they said, oh yes, well, we'd like this, and we'd like that, and we'd like this, and then the facilitator said, and how many people would like to volunteer for that? Nobody raised their hand. And so that's the, that's it. That's how hard it is. So I think it's a real process. I think we got a pretty good start on it. We made some, good flow charts, and you said that we would just, distribute those to new members and go over them and then we would hook the new members up so that they would be very clear from the beginning. These are the neighborhoods that your zip code represents. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, I feel like there has been a really good start on a lot of those efforts, and maybe in the coming year, we'll talk about what our goals for next year might be, but something that we might consider is taking the work that you guys have done and maybe formalizing a little bit more into some orientation type materials, not only for new members, but those of us who've been here for a while
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Did the Festival of Neighborhoods folks, did you guys have any other successes, challenges, lessons learned you wanted to share? I know you guys already spoke earlier in the meeting.
One of the things that our debrief meeting last week we discussed was really more the how to allocate kind of responsibilities between all the moving parts on the planning committee, because obviously there's the NEC members, so that would have been Jake, Elizabeth, and myself, and then of course the city support that we had, mostly from Trey and Christina, and then the community volunteers. And because this was such, we were so new in the planning process, there was definitely a lot of, I wouldn't say confusion, but starting out, it's kind of hard to delineate, okay, who's responsible for what? And sometimes that can cause, too much redundancy in one area and then not enough in another area. So that's one of the things I think that was helpful that Christina brought up at our debrief meeting last week. I don't know if that's something that would necessarily be included in an annual report, but I will say that is, since we already talked about, the successes that we had, I would say that's one of the lessons I think that we're in the process of learning, is how to best kind of allocate those responsibilities so that everyone's, feels like they're helping, but at the same time, it's a lot more efficient, right?
Thanks for sharing that, Moira. And just for your all's awareness, I skipped past the slide earlier because the conversation had moved on. But in your meeting materials, which are, it's the folder that is linked to in your email that has like the agenda and the minutes. When you go to the slide presentation, if you want to review what I shared with the members of the NAC working group for the festival, this is what Moira is referring to, is like trying to be more intentional about this division of responsibilities and like who's on first and who's doing what. And this is just, having gone through the process twice of planning the festival together, some of us for the first time and some of us for a couple of years now, sort of what we're learning. And I also wanted to share with that group, here's what a timeline for a spring festival could look like. And obviously there's a lot of information there, so if you're interested, please, feel free to review that in the PDF at your convenience. But I say that because maybe one or two of you might like to join that working group to put that festival on in the spring. So,
Please.
This would be a great year to join, just because you get to see all the work that's been done and still how to apply that to bring in additional tables.
I think it would definitely help we certainly need at least 3 NAC members on this planning committee. A 4th would be very helpful, I imagine, as well. Yeah.
Can I offer us a thought? Would it, and I'm big on like organizing structures here, like, would it not make sense maybe for everyone on NAC, if there's only gonna be 6 of us and we don't know how long it'll take to fill them, commit to someone leading it, but everyone have a role, at least until the committee gets bigger, and then the other subgroups could be actual subgroups? I'm jumping ahead in the meeting, but it seems like this is the signature event, right? And there was a lot of lifting, it sounded like.
And then if you spread it out, then we'd have less to do, and, with 6 people instead of 3.
I don't know if there's 5 or 6 work streams that need to get done, so, you could end up having too many cooks in the kitchen, but if there's enough work streams, it could be that each of us take a work stream and one person coordinates them.
Once you start getting too many members, it becomes a quorum.
Yes, the one concern is that if we all got together
Oh, okay.
and, inevitably some other discussions might come up, which are technically part of the public record.
Okay.
So that's the one concern. We could certainly kind of like divvy things up between meetings and then come back and discuss them more. And something I was thinking about was, we're going to talk about our schedule later and whether or not we wanted to go back to monthly meetings and consider if a couple of meetings out of the year were dedicated to festival stuff, kind of like we had our special meeting last time, and might consider doing something like that, have an extra, choose a few of our regular monthly meetings to be dedicated to festival planning.
When do we vote for permanent chair? You're killing it.
Later in the meeting.
She has to because she won the trivia contest.
Yes.
That was the secret nominating
hot right
process, so just so you know.
Well, let me share a little bit about the volunteer group that Sandra and I worked with. Some of our successes, we did, let's see, I think we've recognized 5 individuals now. Now 2 of them were kind of like a joint nomination. And it's just been really great to hear about what these folks have been doing in their community as volunteers and what they've contributed. And I look forward later in the year where we get to honor like Volunteer of the Year. It's gonna be really hard to pick one, actually. I will say one of the challenge that we had is that we got several nominations in the beginning, but it's kind of tapered off now. We haven't gotten any new ones really recently, so maybe there is an opportunity to think about how we're advertising and sharing that kind of information, some different channels that we might consider in the future if we want to continue doing something like that.
How many did you?
5. 2 of them were from Burton Street as like one together. So we've really had like 4 months where we recognize someone. Well, all right, well, should we move on? I don't know how we're doing on time. I'm not keeping track of that at all.
We're doing okay. Dowa might make up a little time for us. We'll see.
I can certainly do my best, and I think I'll be able to make up a good little chunk. I've got it here in front of me too, so if you can just move when I'm ready.
Yeah.
We'll be in good shape. I'm going to go through quickly as you all contemplate what your priorities are going to be for this coming year, the framework that this City Council Advisory Board works within. And you can use that, I hope, as a guide to make sure that the areas where you're spending your precious energy are well aligned with council's vision and their priorities for this coming year. And this year, we're going to have something that's been even more refined, and that is the work planning process that city council committees are working through. So the intention there, as you'll see as we move through these next slides, is that they will be recommending things to come to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee specifically because council has heard our boards and commissions and the feedback that participants have given, and that being that there's a hope for more connection with city council. So that input was heard. It's been integrated into this new approach to city council committee work planning, and we'll look into that a little bit as we move through. But to start off, I thought it was important to just share city council's vision statement. And that's really the vision that we are all working towards. Whether you're serving as a board and commission member, or if you're city staff, that is the imagining that inspires us all to continue to do our work. And here it is. Asheville is a great place to live because we care about people. We invest in our city, and we celebrate our natural and cultural heritage. Our city is for everyone. Our urban environment and locally based economy support workers, entrepreneurs, business owners, families, and tourists, and people of all ages. Cultural diversity and social and economic equity are evident in all that we do. Our neighborhoods are strong, participation in civic life is widespread, and collaborative partnerships are the foundation of our success. So, on the hard days, I always find that helpful to go back and just review. And to this group specifically, I just want to note that neighborhoods are mentioned specifically. All right, so that's the big vision, and if we're going to walk towards that path, we got to take a few steps. So what might be guiding those steps? And that's where we have council's focus areas. And this year, they are an equitable and diverse community, transportation and accessibility, a thriving local economy, a connected and engaged community, well-planned and livable community, clean, safe, and health environment, quality, affordable housing, and a financially resilient city. And so I hope there too that this important committee, city council appointed committee sees the work that you're doing within those priority areas. Then we drill down even deeper. And so what is that? So again, we were at a really big idea. We got to a more focused idea, and now we're down to the part where we're looking at the things. What are the things that we're going to be focusing on a little more specifically? And for this year, it's reparations, reimagining public safety, homeless strategies, equitable and affordable housing and stability, neighborhood and climate resilience, and improving and maintaining infrastructure and core services. I will note that maintaining infrastructure is something that was added this year. And there is, I want to say last year it was improve and I want to say it had something to do with more, expand. It was more. That's what I remember. It implied more. And so council was quite cognizant of we can do more, we can have more, and we must maintain the things that we have. That's very important because it can be costly in the long run. So that is a difference between last year and this year.
Dahl, can I just ask, what's the fiscal year's calendar?
July 1 through June 30.
Okay, so that's why it's a 24, 25. So this is July
So
1, 24.
Yeah, we're in fiscal year 25 right now.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Which is, that is recognized, that is challenging with the annual reporting that we do with boards and commissions and the work planning. That can be a little bit challenging because we're on a fiscal year and this process is on a calendar year. So I do know that those conversations that there's an awareness of this and conversations around that are happening.
Is part of that, sorry to interrupt you, but is part of the intention of like doing the annual report in January is that if there were any budgetary requests, like does that align more with the budgeting planning cycle?
Yes, somewhat, I'll say. What it aligns best with is it comes right before council's strategic planning retreat each year. So having that, the intention originally had been, having that input from boards and commissions as they go into their retreat, they've got more information from a larger network of people, and then that can be represented as they're establishing their priorities for the next fiscal year.
So they establish their priorities in like February.
You got it.
But then they take effect in July.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right, and they inform as we're coming down to the final budget decisions that are happening prior to July 1. Those priorities can be taken into consideration when deciding what what can be funded and what might need to be pushed to another year. Is that helpful?
Yeah, cool, thank you.
All right. So here we are with that city council committee piece. And I wanted to note here that the equity and, so this board and commission typically reports to council's equity and engagement committee. They are still working on finalizing their work plan, and I wanted to give you all a heads up that they'll be discussing that at their October 15th meeting, and just what some of those things that they might be referring to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee might be. And would just encourage you all to tune in to the city's YouTube channel. You can get to that on the front of the city's website. If you can't view it right at 1 o'clock on the 15th, right after the meeting's over, it'll be up for on-demand review. But that could be helpful information for you all to be aware of. All right, so now, that's the council committee plan. Then we have our organizational work plan. So this is operational. So these are the things that are in the budget that staff have been directed to do, and we're working diligently over the year to make progress in these areas. And they're here for you all broken into council's focus areas. So for FY25, so we're about 3 months into this current organizational work plan. Here are some of the actions that staff are involved with, and this could be helpful information as we move through the next part of your meeting tonight, where you're looking at what some of your priorities, you'd like your priorities to be for the coming year. So a few things under equitable and affordable housing and stability. We've got the implementation of affordable housing plan recommendations. There are a number of plans. There are a number of plans that our community has participated in. They have a number of recommendations, and each year as we're doing our budget planning and organizational work planning, recommendations are agreed or decided upon, and then that's what guides our work. Just to give you an idea, we were in a workshop, which is, if I sound tired or I'm not communicating well, that's because we were in a 4-hour workshop today talking about some of these things across departments. So we've got we have more than 13 or 14 plans, but we were talking about 14 today and where there are intersections in between those and how we might be able to move forward as an organization and achieve something across more if we're working well together collaboratively. So the Affordable Housing Plan is one of those. It touches a number of different departments, and if I recall that affordable housing is something that this committee has discussed having interest in, so just wanted to highlight that as an example of ways that you all can request information so that you can then share information through your networks, which is one of the important things that you all do as a committee. All right, so UDO, that I apologize for that. That's a Unified Development Ordinance. UDO updates are something else that are being looked at and reviewed at the staff level. When we get down to homelessness strategies, the work there is to support the build out and development of the continuum of care, and that's as recommended by the National Alliance to End Homelessness. And there was a report that was done, and all of these reports are available on the city's website if you're interested, or we can get you quick links to them.
Is Unified Development Ordinance another word for zoning, or is that not? Those are two different things. Or related.
They're connected.
Related.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, they are. Those are the laws, ordinances that there are that
They kind of
inform our
dictate.
zoning.
Yeah.
Right, like what can and cannot be done. And it's more than just, I mean, there are more things in the UDO than just zoning.
So zoning's a subset of the Unified.
It's most of what it
Development
is.
Ordinance. Okay.
There are
Yeah.
also some design standards in some cases.
Yeah. And then, like whether or not you can tether your dog. I mean, there's a lot of things that are in there, but it's they're typically at the municipal level. So of course, general statutes from the state we're all required to abide by, and then municipalities do have the opportunity to have additional ordinances. Because of, that's another story. We could do a whole
Good
presentation
answer.
on,
Fine enough answer.
what the UDO is.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just as I'm looking back at some of the slides you've already been over and trying to match them to, and I may be getting, I know we're gonna do this exercise, but the city council priorities should be reflected in, like, one of these is improve and maintain infrastructure and core services. Who decides what are core services besides the things that we need, like through public works, like water, city, like water, like some of these I'm looking at, and I'm also knowing that people in neighborhoods that I have talked to, some of these things don't seem like core services, and they're not necessary. They're more, they're not necessary for people to live in the city. So I'm just curious, where does core services, what are those?
So these are the works of our departments, and so core services in general have to do with the day-to-day work that our departments are providing.
Are they supposed to
And-
match up with the city council priorities?
No, because
or-
they're core services. So council priorities are different areas outside of core services that city council would like staff
Yeah.
to invest attention or dollars in. So, yeah, the core services this is the day-to-day work that's happening all the time that city government is
Okay, I
providing.
think I'm getting hung up on core services being the services that are the most necessary for a city to actually function. And that's not what core services means in this particular.
It sounds like core is not synonymous with necessary, is your
I think that many people have different opinions about that
Okay.
and would be reflected in our budget, and our budget is adopted by our city council, which you all, our community elects. So there are, people have differences of opinions. There's no question about what core services are. And where that comes to light is typically through the budget process each year.
So if they decide to implement it and spend money on it, then it's considered a core service, not the other way around?
I think it depends on what it is.
Okay.
So right now, like the
I'm
trans.
asking to get clarity so I can go back and talk to people that asked me this question.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I really I was a little stuck on.
I would say this is the core services are the day-to-day operations. They're not places that we're hoping to get. They tend to be things like transportation networks, but people have different opinions about, is that just roads, or is that sidewalks and roads? Is that sidewalks,
Right.
bike lanes and roads? So that I just want to acknowledge that there are lots of people have different opinions about what those core services are. But in general, these are things that are happening year after year after year. Yeah, one that, yes, I'll just leave it there. I'm going to fly through these
Yeah.
real quick. So implementing and continuing to refine our organizational equity action plan. That's something that's been done internal to make sure that we're doing our work and approaching our work with an equity lens. Implementing the disparity study and continuing to expand the impact of the Asheville Business Inclusion Program. Beginning McCormick Field construction. Implementing the GAP plan, that's a transportation, this one always gets me. It is Greenways, Accessibility, and Pedestrian Plan. Right? ADA Accessibility Plan. So that can be sidewalks in there. Permitting, land management software replacement, that's through our DSD department. Transit comprehensive operational and financial assessment. We've got the GO bond referendum development and implementation, the advanced metering replacement, that's the water department, and then implementing a facilities assessment and parking engineering assessment. So that's back towards the facilities that the city owns and maintains. That could be this building, that could be the municipal building, fire stations, those types of things. Parking garages are also in there. So some work that's happening that is oriented towards neighborhood and climate resilience would be the development of a solid waste master plan and an urban forestry master plan, implementing the Parks and Recreation System master plan. We've got implementation of the municipal climate action plan, and then there's the downtown Patton Avenue corridor study, where city staff will also be providing support to, through NCDOT for coordination of the I-26 connector project, and that does include the Burton Street community and some commitments that were made associated with that assessment or study. And then implementing Pack Square Vision Plan. So as I come to a close on all of these plans, I just set a bunch of plans, I just want to reiterate that there are over, in these 13, 14 plans, there's over 1,000 recommendations. So every year decisions have to be made. Where's there interconnections, where there's cohesion, and where we'll be focusing our energy with those recommendations. Organizational work plan, fully staffing and operationalizing the community responder program, and then establishing a business improvement district. If you all don't know, the request for proposals just went out here recently for management of that business improvement district. Looking at reparations, implementing the Cease the Harm audit recommendations, and then reviewing and assisting with the implementation of Reparation Commission recommendations. Then also we've got the realignment and accommodations for boards and commissions as another organizational work plan item. And real quick, down to our department, communication and public engagement, because we are the staff liaison to you all. We thought it was.
That one is missing from.
Oh, this happened earlier today. Yeah, if you refresh it, okay, right. This happened earlier. New slides. You're like, wait a minute.
Give me just a second, sorry.
Well, I'm going to tell you all what they are, because I don't know that it's even all that important that you see it, but just to give you an idea of things that we as a department are working on, and that for this fiscal year. And that is one, producing the education materials for the 2024 general obligation bond referendum. So those materials are actually ready. If you're interested, you can let us know. We can come and visit. We can arrange for staff to come and visit and share information about what's being proposed in those buckets that will be on the ballot in November. And then another piece is scoping website accessibility requirements. So we're going to be doing a lot of work on the website, and then that's because there's some new legislation that's come down from the U.S. Department of Justice with accessibility that we must meet. Then third is working collaboratively with departments and external focus groups to standardize the use of our online engagement platform, and that includes standardization of project pages, engagement goals, and reporting. I think that could be important to you all because it's an improvement to how we communicate things, and it could be a good resource for the committee as you're sharing information with your neighborhoods that is important to them. I think that's it for me. That's the framework. There's a lot of framework, isn't it?
Okay. Thank you, Dawa.
You are so welcome.
That's a lot at the end of a long day for you to have to share with us.
Before we go on, I
Yeah.
forgot to ask if we had any public comment.
Thank you for asking. We did not have any public comment.
Okay, just checking.
Yes, no, perfect. Procedure matters. Okay, so this next segment of your agenda, I'm going to briefly lead you through. And in the email that contained your agenda for tonight, I had a little, if you read to the bottom, a suggestion, if you had time to sort of mull over, maybe over the last couple of days, what you're hearing from people in the community in terms of priorities, things that people really care about and are talking about a lot, especially in terms of the types of things that the city can actually help with or do or provide. And the goal of this exercise, well, I just used the word goal. the point of the exercise is not goal setting. I want to be clear about that. And the reason that I think that it's important that we do this, though, is a comment that Joe made at the last meeting, and it tends to come up in the work that you do as a board and commission. You have heard all the way from council's vision, all the way down to the granular work that staff is doing, everything that's going on, that's written down this year at the city. It's a ton of stuff. And we also know that your role as commission members is to make policy recommendations to council. The reality is that that happens periodically, not on a schedule or anything, but every meeting that you come to, you don't always have a policy recommendation to make, right? But as members who are actively involved in the community and doing all of this outreach with neighborhoods, you're hearing a lot about what's important to people, and that's important information. And if there is a place where we can deliver information to NAC that is really, really important to people in the community, then we should do that. You know, we should use this as an opportunity to really dive deep on some topics. So that's why we're asking the question. And so what I'm hoping will happen is that over the next year, we'll be able to start with this list that you're all going to help us develop tonight. And then we will be able to seek out, staff will be able to seek out opportunities to deliver you a quarterly, I'm going to say, presentation on the top 4 or possibly 5 topics. So that's the goal. Does anybody have any questions before we do this? Okay, cool. So time to pull out the mobile device again and go back to slido.com. And the code, I think the code did not change. I think it's still 3312736. And I have not used this Slido feature yet, and I feel like I'm taking a chance. I hope it works. I'm going to follow along too. Give everybody a minute to join. Okay. So, the question, if I go back to the slide itself, the question is up on the screen, so, oh, no, it's not. Okay. So if you just start adding the questions that you might, questions or issues related to city government, and you can add them one at a time. I think you can add more than one. And if we need to pivot away from trying to do this on Slido, we will.
We just type it in as a question?
You can type it in as a question if you want, or even just like topic. Like I'm going to type in transit master plan, and I'm just going to see what works. Traffic calming policy, I just saw that come up. And so we're going to, everybody just take your time. You can add as many as you brought or as you want to. Great. And for the benefit of people who are watching or listening to the meeting, I'll read a couple. How does the City Council share information on initiatives with residents? Downtown safety updates. We want to walk in our neighborhood. When can we have sidewalks or a greenway in our neighborhood? Preventing predatory developers in legacy neighborhoods. Walkability, specifically on Thompson Street along the Swannanoa River. Infrastructure costs, especially water costs, disorganization at department level, overbilling and inaccurate billing, Safety. How is the city addressing affordability of housing when zoning and special permissions are restrictive? Improving housing affordability and availability. Talking about safety at school bus stops. Infill development on residential neighborhoods. What is the city doing about infrastructure issues, water, roads? Supporting residents' experiences and not prioritizing tourists and hotel industry. I'm thinking that means housing. That's cool, you could edit it.
Getting hosed while looking for homes.
Exactly.
It's late, it's fine. Traffic calming. Water issues. When and how can the water department repair and maintain the water systems? Emergency preparedness and communications. So if you're still entering questions, great. So far we've got, it looks like 25. And if you keep your phone open, there are little thumbs up symbols beside each question, and that is an upvote. And so what we want to see is, as you scroll through here, if you would pick your top 3 or 4, and some of them are similar, so we're going to have to sort of understand that there could be some batching that way. Like housing affordability came up in several. But if you would give a thumbs up to your top 4, and we're going to use this as an experiment to see what sort of rises to the top. And after you've had a chance to do that, you can just give me the signal. But take your time. And I'm glad somebody added bears, Joe, because certainly on the neighborhood Facebook groups, it's lost cats and bears. And what else? Bears, trash cans.
You want us to do 4?
Go ahead and do 4, sure.
Are you able to grab each of these boxes and group them like sticky notes? Like, I think there's probably some thumbs ups that are going on. Like, there's probably like 12 thumbs ups on a topic, but it's on 4 different posts as I went through it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
It's like old school sticky notes. We go, okay, that's similar enough. That's a bucket. Vote, don't vote.
Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out.
Okay.
Looks like people are still working, so we're gonna give another minute. I'm not sure what's gonna happen if I click to the next. No, stay here.
combine the ones that are similar?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about that when everybody's ready.
Is anyone still voting?
I think so. Oh, you're done? You still working, Jake? Okay, cool. All right. So, the traffic calming and sidewalks rose to the top. And traffic calming, we talked about today in the 4-hour workshop that Dawa referred to. And so I think that, and I've had conversations with staff in our transportation department. Trey hears this an awful lot at community meetings and emails from neighbors that people want to understand the city's traffic calming policy and what options are available to them. And we know that we have a ton of education to do about traffic calming because we know that just installing speed cushions or speed humps or whatever doesn't necessarily fix people's driving behaviors. So, yes, we can certainly, if that feels really important to have a presentation on this year, I think that would be a no-brainer. Sidewalk improvements and greenway development are both, as Dawa said when she was talking about the GAP plan implementation, sidewalks and greenways are both part of the GAP plan. And so I'm thinking presentation on the GAP plan implementation could be a good one.
And with specific questions so that we could ask, where does that exactly stop? And when, how far down the road will we have to go before it extends to this neighborhood? Those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
It would be helpful to have some more clarity. It's hard to read that document.
Yeah, it is hard it's hard for me too. I'll speak for myself. And it's additionally challenging because of the way that projects are designed, funded, and sequenced to be surgical about when they're coming. So I want to be clear about that. But yes, a gap plan presentation makes total sense based on what we're seeing here. How does the city council share information on initiatives with residents? Could you share more? So I can see your name on this one, Charles. Can you say more about that question?
It's like Larry David. But no, I mean, it's probably like what Trey sends us out that we send out. But is there is there a multi-point plan of how? Is there? I mean, it would just be nice to know how they do it. Like they have these 7 channels that they go through, and maybe some of it's Trey's email that he sends us. But is there like a systematic way in which the city council disseminates information beyond we meet in a meeting and you can come watch it? So highlighting some of that, or
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the question, one way, as it relates to their priority areas is in their annual retreat. So outside of a formal council meeting, there's the annual retreat, and that is where they're digging into talking about what their priorities are going to be. And then the way they communicate, certainly from the dais when they're in council chamber, but then that is through the person that they oversee, being the city manager. The city manager oversees our department and all of the other departments, and it's our job to make sure we're communicating about the progress that they're making with any of their goals. So there's things that they communicate about, and then there's things that city staff communicate about, and then you all are an arm of that as well. Does that answer the question?
yeah, and maybe I'm asking a question in a leading way to like say maybe they're not as effective as they could be, because like ask some random person on next door, God forbid, like what's going on in the city, and it's a rumor mill like everything else in the world these days, and so like. Are there new channels, and can we be part of that channel beyond sending out a great newsletter? Don't get me wrong. I've cited it 3 times now, but are there other ways that, and maybe this gets into our goals versus just what you're going to report on every quarter, to us, but I'm trying to get, like, what's a better way to get, or not a better way, but another way to get information so that I don't have to go, I'm really civically minded and I read the annual report for X, Y, Z, because a lot of people complain about stuff, but like Joe said, they want someone to, they're not gonna go do anything about it, right? They tell Trey everything they don't like, and then they go on about their day, right? So I'm just, maybe it's the seed of an idea in my head. I don't have an answer, so it's probably like, stop stirring up trouble if you don't have an answer, but I'm thinking, are there more avenues, are there things that we can be involved in that help to disseminate the wins? I think people don't hear enough about the wins.
So it sounds like communications as a topic
Yeah.
somehow could be a thing.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, like, clearly we're not gonna solve this issue, like, right here, right now, but perhaps
ever,
just
probably.
hearing more from your department about, I mean, I'm sure you have a strategy when you go to communicate something out to the community, and just learning more about what that strategy is, and maybe those of us who are in the neighborhoods and hearing that maybe that's not reaching the folks in the neighborhoods, maybe there's some ideas that come out about how the message could get to the neighborhoods in a better way.
Yes, we are always looking, because channels are always changing, especially in this day and age where things are changing so fast, and there's a lot of noise to break through. People are in information overload, and what we know from decades of experience is that people show up for the things they care about, or if it's impacting them, which is why those personal relationships are so important. So we could definitely give an entire presentation on how we tackle that within our department, because we've got our communication and we've got our community and our public engagement arms, and we are always learning and open to what others are experiencing so that we can be more effective and just continue to improve in that area.
Cool. Okay, so that's 3 so far: traffic calming, the gap plan, and an overarching communications focus. If we're looking for one more, there's also, that also had 3 upvotes. How's the city addressing affordability of housing when zoning and special permissions are restrictive? And that is totally connected to the work that's happening right now with updating the Unified Development Ordinance for equitable and affordable housing as we're implementing recommendations from the Affordable Housing Plan that was just published. And staff is working really hard on this, and we definitely would love the opportunity to be able to communicate about it with you all, and you all are on the communication engagement plan for all of that. But is there consensus, I guess, that like affordability / zoning, that's what I hear in that question, that's going to be our 4th area of interest? Does that work? I see your face, Elizabeth, maybe not.
Well, I just keep thinking there's, you know, I guess mentioned in a few different ways, but the infrastructure, the average resident in Asheville that already lives here seems to have, there's a lot of conversation everywhere I go about.
Yeah, I think the infrastructure, I mean, I don't know if the communication one, I think the infrastructure, was it already, I mean, sidewalk improvements, water, all of those things together, or do you want?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I keep thinking of, you know, like public works. Does that I don't know which departments encompass all these different things, but are those?
And that's it, yeah, and that's okay, because it can be confusing, but if you guys have certain types of infrastructure that you're interested in, then we can get you the right folks in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Greenway is separate from Elizabeth's on the
Right.
water. I think, and I would be a recommendation to go with Elizabeth on that one. I would get rid of the zoning one if I had to choose between that one and the infrastructure.
It looks like there were some votes for other infrastructure-related things, like further down, and if you combine them together, it floats to the top of the pile.
Right.
Cool, thank you for that.
Y'all said that so much better than I did. I was trying, like, I was scrolling and it was like, it was here.
Well, and as I just mentioned, I know that planning and urban design is going to want to come to NAC to talk about the UDO and the zoning and affordable housing stuff, to hear you all's policy recommendations for things. Oh, hello. Hi, Councilmember
Hello,
Roney.
Councilmember Roney.
Good evening. I realize I'm a little bit late, but I'm very glad that I'm here at this point because I wonder if, because the bonds that are on the ballot in November, if y'all might want to get updates on how the bonds connect to the plans that we have. For example, the GAP plan would include sidewalks and greenways, and then the bonds would be like how you implement them. So maybe there's a way to do both. And then the housing would also have a bond to go with the affordable housing plan. So maybe it's possible to like synchronize?
Absolutely. I think a request has gone out to all boards and commissions if they would like a presentation on what is within each of those bond buckets. And we can certainly, what are we, we're in September, October, and you all are meeting in October?
No.
No.
We're not meeting until after the election.
Yeah.
So what I was imagining was,
No idea what's in the bonds.
yeah, I wondered if it's possible, I know we did a lot of community engagement before the bonds and before the plans, but there's going to be that section to touch base with folks afterwards, and y'all could be really integral to getting back out into the neighborhoods as we get to implementation. Just thinking about that, adding capacity for staff for outreach, taking the information from the plans and the bonds to go back to neighborhood meetings. I don't know, it seems like it could hit a couple different things, but synchronize them together.
The categories are recreation, transportation, affordable housing, and
Public safety, especially
Public.
fire station improvements.
Public safety facilities.
I was hoping that maybe those 4 things would directly align with some of the things we'd already called out, and maybe we just like choose those as our categories, but I don't think they're like quite harmonious.
So Dawa, you had called out getting us more info on the general obligation bond referenda.
Yes.
What we're talking about here, is there like an opportunity for a virtual someone at the city staff to put it on the YouTube channel or whatever ahead of the election?
So,
Save time?
yes, there is, and it is, I think it's Bond Education 2024 at ashevillennc.gov. So if you all have neighborhood, and that has gone, I think it's in the it's in the city news, and I think it's been in the neighborhood news. Okay, it'll be in the neighborhood news.
There's some limitations on what the city can do.
We cannot
But you
try
can
to
say what's in
persuade
it, right?
anyone, but we can educate
Just
on what's in it.
educate,
So you can
okay.
have a city staff member come, and they can share what types of projects would be included if the bond passes, and what plans, as Councilmember Roney just mentioned.
So I'm thinking about like, you're talking about affordability of housing got 3 upvotes. So is there a way to get a presentation on the housing bond and how staff are analyzing the affordable housing plan to sync those up with the equitable affordable housing goal, and how that would sync up with your subcommittee of council, which I'm on, which is the Equity Engagement Committee, so that y'all could be outreach arms? I don't know, it's possible that you might have multiple of these that sync up at the right time, if you want to do that.
Right, and that would be, and you're thinking post-election if they all pass, or before the election?
I would trust y'all to make that call. I just happened to, I'm hearing y'all say, we have to pick between this and this, and I was like, we might need you for all the things.
I think before you got here, we were just talking about some of these main issues and talking about communication, the one that's at the top right now. How do they share information? I think it's pretty telling that I think we're pretty active board and commission, and
Yeah.
a lot of us don't know what's on the bonds, and maybe I'll claim my own ignorance because I didn't even know until a couple weeks ago that was coming up on me.
Yeah, it was really sad that the Festival of Neighborhoods had to be canceled, because I was like, oh no, that's such a wonderful way to reach that culmination of all your work to do that community outreach and have those connections, but this might be a backup way to do it. And maybe it's a virtual thing, maybe it's a coordinated like talking point list, however y'all imagine it would come together. It seemed to me like you didn't have to like be alone in forming those ideas from scratch.
And I will share that all that information is available. There's information, there's a video about what the projects are. It's all available on the website, and it's gone out through e-news. It's been on socials, and it's only happened, you haven't missed much, Elizabeth. All of that just got launched, I'm losing track of time, a few weeks ago,
Okay.
here ahead of the election. So it's not that it's been out there for a long time, but we can send the link to you all, and it's ashevillennc.gov asheville.gov/project/bond education. Or you can probably just Google Asheville Go Bonds and get the educational materials, or do that on the front page of our website.
Is it too late to get that guy that drives around with the dueling pianos truck? And just put it on one app? Is that too late?
Like a jingle. It did make me think about when we were having the conversation about greenways and the transportation bond and how we were kind of being vague as we were waiting for our equity engagement staff to go to a retreat in Boston and then come back with new tools and skills for engaging the community, is why part of the transportation bond looks kind of vague if you look at the city's page and says generally Greenway. But there are some neighborhoods like Burton Street who have named Smith Mill Creek Greenway as a request for 14 years in their neighborhood plan. So we have a neighborhood letter from the past month asking for that to be a priority. So it's just it's a curiosity to me that we don't necessarily have to start from scratch when we could maybe knit these things together if that fits in your mission. And I'm happy to help, whatever that looks like.
So just to kind of bring us all back together a little bit, what we're trying to do here is come up with maybe our top 4 or 5 topics that over the course of the year we'd really like to receive a lot more information about from staff. And maybe when we know ahead of time, this meeting we're going to talk about traffic calming policy, for example, to be able to share that with the neighborhood so that those folks who have been really interested about traffic calming policy could come and attend our meeting and be in the room when that discussion is happening, maybe connect with the staff members who are involved with that. So, and we're not gonna be able to do everything. It's kind of like, council has their priorities, and while we'd love to be able to do everything all the time, it's just not possible. So we have to kind of narrow our focus into what do we really want to hear about in the next 12 months, well, starting in January through the end of the year. So that way these lovely folks can get the other staff members in line to come and share these things with us. So the top things that I jotted down were things like traffic calming policy, the GAP plan implementation, infrastructure, communication strategies, affordable housing and zoning, and then maybe more on like the Go Bond stuff. So I guess I'm trying to get a little, how are we feeling about the order of these, moving things up and down? Are there any that we feel like we could take off the table? I kind of like that strategy sometimes, to say like, this one we're okay with demoting it for now. Sometimes that's easier than deciding what the top priorities are, is to figure out, what's not so important.
I think it's important, with the GAP plan, I think we all have heard sidewalks often. And so with the GAP plan, I tend to think more of greenways, but it's not just that. But I definitely agree with the top 3. That's what I hear. Traffic, it's really much more crowded, much faster. We don't have sidewalks. We're really worried about green space and infrastructure. There's a water department in our neighborhood every other week or whatever. So those are the 3 top ones for my neighborhood that I hear.
Any other thoughts on those? Or it would be helpful if we pick maybe 4 to 5, because it might be that we can't get staff to come for one of them, so then we have some other options. But it sounds like the top priorities that I'm hearing are number 1, traffic calming policy, number 2, GAP plan implementation, number 3, infrastructure. Does that sound right? Or did we put infrastructure in more like the number 1 position?
Are you splitting hairs? Probably.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I've been on, only a couple months, but I just hear sidewalks. Sidewalks. That's maybe specific to my neighborhood, but that's what I hear a lot.
And they're all kind of interrelated, right? I mean, sidewalks are important because people are hauling ass to the neighborhood, excuse my language, right? Like,
Could be traffic calming.
yeah.
They don't knock you off the sidewalk.
I'm disappointed Bears didn't make the
People like the Bears.
We have a very symbiotic relationship with the Bears.
But you want to push for 4 or 5, which makes sense, right? Because there's going to need to be
Yeah,
some
so
backups,
housing,
right?
housing.
So,
Yeah, I guess so. We've come up with our top 3. So what are like our bottom 2, just to keep some other things in
I
the
like the
hopper?
affordability of housing.
Yeah, I
just
think
that's
housing
huge
is a
question.
good one too. And it was, not only was, one of them was upvoted a lot, but then there was like 4 or 5 different entries that were related to housing. So I think that alone shows you kind of what we're hearing from our neighborhoods in terms of
What about,
surrounding that.
what about the development, the issue of zoning and the development? I do, Beaver Dam Valley had, a real run-in with developers, and I think that's an issue for a lot of neighborhoods.
I think,
The tension between YIMBYs and NIMBYs is always going to be there. So, and there's bad developers and there's good developers. So I'd love to hear the story of that because I think there's nuance on both sides, would be my take.
Yes, council member?
You are on a very similar track to the Human Relations Commission that just had a presentation on the affordable housing plan. So maybe whether it's folks who have concerns around development and what are the community benefits of it, or how we're going to advance affordability, it might help this group to know what the plan is so that you can then re-articulate it to your neighborhoods. Whether folks like the plan or not, they probably want to know what the plan is, would be my guess. And since Sasha just presented to the HRCA, maybe that same presentation could come to this group, and you might be able to hit multiple targets. As you mentioned, it shows up multiple times in your survey in different ways. So just an
We
idea.
had some report last year, and it was very helpful about when they were doing the assessment and so forth.
Yeah, we had the consultants came in,
Yeah.
if I remember.
It was very
Yeah.
good.
Right.
Yeah, so closing the loop.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because there's already a presentation, we've already got like the infrastructure in place, might help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Councilmember Roney just stated is exactly what I think I want to hear. I mean, I'm not necessarily looking for an opinion, just more like what's going on and how can we communicate it back? Because some people like the ideas, some people won't like the ideas that are in there, but just so they understand it.
And if we have a situation where we're looking for a recommendation, especially from this group, then you'll be ready to provide a recommendation instead of like, wait, we got to start from the beginning, because you'll be in the flow.
I'm also thinking about where we might be able to connect with some other boards and commissions on some of these. Like definitely the traffic calming and the gap plan implementation, there might be some opportunity to do something joint with the MMTC. Maybe to hear from someone on planning and zoning about, they're going to be really integral in the UDO amendments that are coming up. And so it'd be interesting to hear from members of that commission, what they're working on potentially.
This was a very helpful conversation and exercise, and I really thank you all for all of the thoughtfulness. And I want to move us along if you're ready, because
Yeah, I'm
we're
thinking
running
in
out
the
of time.
interest of time, we might consider tabling our discussion on goals until the next meeting, and then we can kind of marinate on what we just talked about a little bit, if folks are okay with that. Because, yeah, we only have like 12 minutes left in our meeting. So now we'll move into election of officers. We're going to vote for chair and vice chair, and we'll take nominations for that. There'll be like a nomination, a second, and then votes. And I do just want to say, like, don't feel like you have to stick with the status quo. If other people want an opportunity to lead, you can also self-nominate, whatever. So I'll open the floor for nominations. Do we do chair first or vice chair? Does it matter?
I think it's your choice.
Okay. I guess we'll take nominations for chair.
I'd like to nominate Elise Martin chair.
I'd like to second that.
Well, thank you. Are there any other nominations for chair? All in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
And if there's any opposed?
Did you vote?
I reserve my vote if there's a tie. Thank you all, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I guess we should have asked if you accepted the nomination.
I'll accept the nomination. And now we'll take nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Elizabeth for vice chair.
Would you accept the nomination? Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
And any other nominations for vice chair? All right, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right. Elizabeth. All right, well, we shall serve as your leadership team for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last thing we'll discuss today is the schedule for 2025. So this won't take effect at the next meeting, but starting in January through December of next year, what our schedule will be. And just to provide a little bit of context for that, in the past, we have typically met every month. This was the first year where we experimented doing every other month, the intention being that it would give the working groups time in the off months to be more involved in what the work of their working group. So I guess first I just want to hear some feedback about how people felt about that schedule. Did we feel like we were missing out on things? I think we ended up having like longer meetings because we only met every other month. And then if there's any feedback on, was the time, since we didn't have those meetings in those months, did you feel like you were able to be more productive on other things, or could you have been just as productive if we had still met monthly? It's kind of the sort of feedback I'm hoping to get.
I really missed having the meetings once a month this year. I think we were able to get more done in a shorter amount of time last year than what we are now. And if we're considering throwing in meetings for the Festival of Neighborhood throughout the year, I think monthly meetings would be beneficial for that as well.
I think it was hard because we also missed an every other month meeting because of a holiday. And so I think it's difficult to keep up the momentum. So I tend to agree with Zach.
So this is my second month on the meeting, or how many ever months, but I find in other organizations I'm a part of, if I meet on a more regular cadence, even if it's shorter, it is more effective and more dirt gets moved, for lack of a better term.
And I definitely think we ran up against deadlines for things that were happening before we would meet again, that we felt like we wanted more information, more communication. We just wanted to be more in the know. And I think going back to our monthly meetings might provide us the venue for that.
I'm definitely hearing consensus about monthly. That's what I was hoping for personally. I wanted to let everyone else have their say first before I weighed in. I think if we have the opportunity to meet monthly, we could have the situation where we reserve 2 or 3 of our monthly meetings to talk specifically about the festival. We could have these sort of like working sessions where we really dive into a particular topic, of which we just identified several of those. So that would be my suggestion as well.
Shall I make a motion?
Please.
Yes, that we begin having monthly meetings on the 4th Monday of the month. And when do you want to start?
This will be for January
Okay,
2025.
starting January 2025.
A
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful, wonderful. Now, we do always run into the issue in May where Memorial Day is always the 4th Friday of the month. Is it possible, do we want to just take that month off? That's what we've done in the past, or we could adjust our schedule? if
We can wait and
possible?
see and how the flow of the meetings is and what's on the agenda, perhaps.
We could, we can call a special meeting like we did for last month. have to be mindful that we have to notice it at least 48 hours prior to the meeting, and we have to stick to the specific agenda.
So what's the protocol? Because the only reason I ask is if the schedule of neighborhoods is May 6th, it'd be nice to have a kind of a debrief meeting, or not a debrief meeting, but a meeting somewhat shortly after that instead of waiting a full month and a half, just as a means of getting back together.
That is something to keep in mind. We just talked about at the beginning of the meeting, potentially having the Festival of Neighborhoods on April 26th or May 3rd.
Oh, so, okay, maybe it would.
So
If it's April 26th, then maybe it works, but,
I have to look at the calendar. and
so
see
just
where
something to
that
think about.
falls. I imagine we might meet like right before the festival.
Which it may be good to meet right before and
Right.
after.
Let's see, so actually, so April 28th would be our meeting of April, and then we have the festival on the 26th, so that would work out well, actually. If you guys aren't like so exhausted from, from the festival on the Saturday before. All right.
Real quick, and if I'm out of order here, let me know, but we were brainstorming ideas, and this is related to the schedule, and obviously we're not deciding it tonight, but that brainstorming idea about the quarterly going out into the community and having it like north, south, east, west, something like that. Is that something we're gonna talk about later this year, like at our November meeting, or like possible ways to increase engagement, but having a meeting outside this room to order?
Yeah, that was something we talked about at our like agenda setting meeting was like for MMTC, for example, we had 2 meetings this year where we actually met in a venue. We usually meet online, but we chose to have a meeting at the Wesley Grant Center, and then we had another meeting last month at the Burton Street Community Center, and we actually did get some community people came in. They were able to, the IT staff was able to set up where we were able to live stream from, at least at the Burton Street community, they were able to live stream us there. We didn't have that at the Wesley Grant Center. But I know that the technology is changing and advancing like every week right now with that project. So we did discuss potentially having some of our meetings out in public spaces, maybe even possibly incorporating those like workshop focus areas that we talked about, maybe choosing to hold those in community spaces as another way to encourage community members to attend. But I think as long as we set, this is what our schedule is going to be, we can discuss the venue. Can we discuss the venue later, or do we have to choose that now? I know with MMTC, it was kind of loose.
There's always the option. Nothing has to be set in stone now. I mean, the most formal action would be if we need to make a special called meeting, or if there needs to be adjustment that needs to be noticed of the time and space that a meeting's happening in, if there's a change. So I think the takeaway is there's flexibility. The more you know now, the easier. Then it's just out there, and we don't have to notice it because it'll be published as this is their schedule for 2025. But there's always the opportunity to notice if there's been a change to what's been voted on as your schedule.
So I would love to, maybe for the November meeting, as a preview, kind of reserve like 10 minutes of discussion on how we want 2025 scheduled to look, with that in mind. So.
Sounds good.
That's a great idea, and can I just add, as part of that, can we just understand the logistical challenges for the staff on that front during that conversation to make, just to, in case it is onerous on your part?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, so we tabled our talk about goals until the next meeting, and we'll talk more about venue and that kind of information at the next meeting as well. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, November 25th, 2024, 6 p.m. here in person. And let's see, upcoming on our agenda, Kelly Hines from the Asheville Fire Department Community Risk Division TV A, for when you'll provide some information to us, but I imagine, will that be on November or?
Depends on Kelly's schedule, and if, yeah. Do you want to just come up real quick and share the information that you brought to share tonight? And
Sure. So you have a little flyer. I am first and foremost bummed the Festival of Neighborhoods didn't happen because we had planned some awesome programming to bring to y'all to help your event. So that was a bummer. We also have an event that is focused around Fire Prevention Week and Fire Prevention Month, which is October, and that's a national program. And we have an event this Saturday at the Asheville Outlets. We'd love for you to share the information to the neighborhoods. It's for all ages, a lot of information for adults and lots of activities, including Sparky will be at the event. And so pictures will be happening with Sparky. So we hope to see you there. And please join, spread the word. All ages, come on out. It is from 10 to 2.
Awesome.
Spread the word. Yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you for waiting patiently.
Absolutely. One of the things, so my position is new as Community Risk Reduction Division Chief. And so I want to, part of the reason why I come to listen is to see what your concerns are and what you would like to hear and what we could provide better in public service and public safety to bring it to the neighborhoods is my imagining of where I'm going with this division. So to hear what your concerns are and things like that, I'm taking information in so that I can determine what it is that you want so that I can come and present to you an information that is concerning to you.
Lovely. Well, thank
And
you.
I plan on going out to the neighborhoods and provide the information as well as to the committee.
Thank you. Well, if there are no objections, I will adjourn the meeting.